Hi, welcome to the video version of Rob's Bass Bulletin for May 2020. This time we're talking about taking material and developing it, mostly probably for the use of having a fill at the end of a phrase, or if you find yourself sitting on a part when you're playing live, imagine someone takes a guitar solo and it ends up going on for a little longer than expected. Be good to develop that part into something different so we don't end up just sounding monotonous. It'd also be a good way of building solos or possibly writing your own music or adding a bass part to music that someone else has written. So to get started, let's take, just as an example, one measure phrase. This is something that we might find in a real slow grinding sludge metal psychedelic rock type of song, and we're going to just play that phrase a little bit and see what we can do with it. The first example has a G, an A, a B flat, and a D, one note per beat. So with a little bit of time, it'll sound like this. So the most common spot to begin doing something a little bit different might be the fourth time that that phrase comes around. So what we're going to do first is just stick with the G on the first beat, the A on the second beat, the B flat on the third, and the D on the fourth beat, but we're going to vary the rhythm a little bit and just busy it up a bit. So if you happen to be able to look at the email version, which is in documented form, HTML form on my website, you can see that we've divided the first G into 2/8 notes, left the A and the B flat alone, and then the D is divided into 2/16 and an eighth. So it'll now sound like this on the fourth measure. So it's a simple little development, but it has the same effect as a drum fill at the end of a section would have. And in some cases, that might be all we need. We could do a little bit more with it, build the same concept just a little bit further. And so again, the example that's in the actual newsletter has 4/16 on the G beat, 2/8 on the A beat, eighth B flat and 2/16 on the B flat beat, and then the D beat is 2/16 and an eighth, and it sounds like this. In addition to changing the rhythm within each beat, the next concept that the newsletter looks at is to actually change the harmonic rhythm a little bit, so to alter the amount of time we spend on one or the other of the notes. And the third example in the newsletter has straight 16ths on the G beat, straight 16ths on the A beat, a pair of eighths on the B flat beat, and then the last beat, instead of being all D, starts with a B flat eighth note and then has a pair of D 16th notes. And that ends up sounding like this. Continuing with the idea of changing the harmonic rhythm, the next example in the bass bulletin has just 1/16 note G on the first beat, followed by 3/16 note A's, and then the second beat is 2/16 note A's and 2/16 note B flats. Third beat is just 2/8 on B flat, and the fourth beat is that one B flat and two D's lick. And it sounds like this. thing that we might want to try out, in addition to changing the harmonic rhythm, we could move back and forth between those notes a little bit. There's nothing in any rule book anywhere that says once we've moved on to B flat, we can't come back to A. So this final sludge metal example, we have that same first beat from last time, but then the second beat has 1/16th A, 2/16th B flats, and one more 16th A. The third beat is now 8th note B flat, and then 16th D and B flat, and the fourth beat is an 8th note D followed by 2/16ths, and it's much easier to play than it is to talk about. It sounds like this. The second section of the bass bulletin looks at a different feel and also a couple more concepts about how we can develop more stuff out of stuff that we already have. So we're starting with kind of a more up-tempo, kind of a groovy walking feel, like and the first thing that we did was to bust those quarter notes down into eighth notes. So it really is kind of like the rhythmic adjustment idea. We had kind of a, and you know, since if we're playing the lick twice as fast, we can fit in twice as many of them. The next idea was, well, if we're going to play the lick twice, the second one could be up an octave, so we've got. And then the last one was, rather than doing a complete octave jump, we could just move further up the G pentatonic major scale, so that would be like this. And let's put that in time, and I'm going to play through the basic idea and then the three examples one after the other. Sounds like this. And then the second concept was the idea of introducing kind of a stutter or a hiccup. You know, instead of just playing the lick twice, we could kind of begin the repeat before the first lick is finished. So that's, and then if we're doing that, we could also kind of begin that hiccup and then adjust ourselves and put the second lick on the beat, and that would be like this. So once again, just developing a few more licks out of a lick that we've already got. And then the third idea was that we could octave flip part but not all of the lick. And so that gives us something that sounds like. And we took that and thought, well, if we're doing that, we could take that same phrase that we just came up with and reverse the last two notes, which would be. Let's try that again. Yeah, that's what I meant. And then the last idea was that if we're going to repeat the lick, we can repeat parts of it at a time. So we'll do the first two notes repeating and then the second two notes, and that's a. And if we do all that in time. The last line plays around with some syncopation, so we're still playing the same notes in the same order. We're just playing some of them a little earlier or a little later. We're tying the G in the first example across into the second beat, and we're tying the D out into the third beat. So from this, that next example is a. And we're doing similar things with the second and third examples, tying the G over, tying the A across the middle of the measure. And then in the last example, the G is real quick, and we're tying the A into the first beat, tying the B and the D across the beats as well, too. So the whole thing would sound like this. And that's about it. With those concepts, you can get a whole lot of new stuff out of stuff that you're playing already. You can develop any idea you have in just a billion different ways. And I hope that it'll, give you a lot of food for thought and help your bass playing.